So I want to start today with a number that genuinely shocked me when I was preparing for this.
Okay.
In 2021, the estimated economic cost of chronic pain in the U.S. was over $722 billion.
It's a staggering number. It's so big. It's almost hard to picture what that even means.
Well, to put it in perspective, and this is the part that got me, it's higher than the annual costs of heart disease, cancer, and diabetes.
Combined.
Which is just, it's wild. We talk so much about those big three, right?
Mm-hmm.
But pain is quietly outspending them all.
It really is.
And that brings us to the central question we really want to tackle today. How does a simple warning signal, pain, which is supposed to help us?
Right. It's supposed to be protective.
Exactly. How does it transform into this self-sustaining disease that actually rewires the brain, shrinks our gray matter, and costs us more than our biggest killer?
And that's the key word right there. Transform. We are not just talking about hurting for a long time. We are talking about a very specific biological process. It's called chronification.
Chronification. It sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It does, but it's very, very real. It's the active process where the body literally learns to be in pain.
And today, that's what we're going to decode. We're going to see how that process impacts everything from, our bank accounts to our actual relationships. Welcome back to the Classroom Deep Divers. I'm your host, and I am really ready to unpack this because I think most of us, myself included, have a fundamental misunderstanding of what pain even is.
I think you're right.
We think, okay, I have an injury, so I have pain. Simple cause and effect.
But the sources we're looking at today suggest it is so much more complicated.
It is. It's great to be here. And yeah, the goal today is to really shift that perspective. We need to understand that chronic pain isn't just acute pain that's stuck around too long.
Right.
It's a fundamental change in how the body's entire operating system, the nervous, immune, and endocrine systems, all of them start to function differently.
And before we dive into the biology, just remind us why this matters so much to every single person listening. Because it affects 1 in 5 adults. 1 in 5. So even if you're not the one experiencing it, I guarantee someone you love is.
Yeah.
And understanding this mechanism is, I think, crucial for empathy, for developing better treatments, and for just recognizing all the hidden costs that go way beyond physical discomfort.
So grab a notebook, deep divers.
Mm-hmm.
We are connecting some serious dots today between biology, psychology, and economics. Let's dive in.
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's start with the basics of this transition. We all know what acute pain feels like, right? You stub your toe, it throbs, you say some words you shouldn't, and then it fades.
Mm-hmm.
At what point does that become chronic? Is it just about, marking 3 months on a calendar?
Well, the timeline is the starting point, sure. But the real distinction is physiological. Acute pain is a symptom of an injury.
Okay.
It's the body's normal reaction to damage, and it usually resolves as you heal. So less than 3 months, it's protective. It's the thing that tells you, hey, don't walk on that broken ankle.
Right. It's useful. It's a good signal.
Precisely. But chronic pain is defined as pain that lasts for more than 3 months, often long after any initial tissue damage has healed. And at that point, it stops being a symptom. It becomes a disease in its own right.
And this is where that word comes in again.
This is where we talk about chronification.
So that's the transition. But I want to get under the hood. If the ankle bone has healed, why does it still hurt? What is happening?
It involves a process called central sensitization.
Okay.
Think of your nervous system like a soundboard in a recording studio. It's got a master volume knob. Normally that knob is set to a reasonable level. You feel a light touch as a light touch.
Standard settings. Makes sense.
Right. But with central sensitization, the nervous system gets stuck in a state of high reactivity. That volume knob gets jammed to the max.
Yeah.
The brain and spinal cord literally rewire themselves to become more efficient at sending pain signals.
Wait. The body gets better at feeling pain. That sounds incredibly counterproductive.
It is. It's a form of neuroplasticity, which is usually a good thing, like when you learn a new skill. But in this case, the nervous system is learning pain.
Wow.
And the sources highlight 2 key terms that really explain what this feels like: hyperalgesia and allodynia.
Okay, let's break those down because they sound technical, but I have a feeling the experience is pretty common. Hyperalgesia.
Hyperalgesia literally means too much pain. This is an exaggerated response to something that is actually painful.
So like a paper cut feels like a sword wound.
That's a great way to put it. Or you bump your arm on a door frame. For us, it's a mild ouch. For someone with central sensitization, it can feel like a bone-shattering break. The signal is just massively amplified by that cranked-up volume knob.
That must be exhausting. And the other one, allodynia.
Allodynia means other pain. This is when you feel pain from a stimulus that shouldn't be painful at all.
Give me an example of that.
The touch of a cotton bedsheet. Or the fabric of your shirt brushing against your skin.
No way.
In a sensitized system, those neurons fire as if they're under attack. The brain interprets a soft, gentle touch as a burn or a cut.
That is terrifying,
Yeah.
to be hurt by a bedsheet. I want to use an analogy from the reading that really helped me visualize this whole thing. They called it the fire alarm analogy.
It's a perfect one. It really illustrates the difference.
So let's paint this picture. Imagine your body is a big, complex building. Acute pain is the fire alarm going off because there's actual smoke.
There's a fire in the kitchen.
Right. It's loud, it's annoying, but it's doing its job. It's saving your life. You put the fire out, the smoke clears, the alarm stops.
Exactly. The system worked as designed.
But with chronic pain, the fire is out. The building is safe. But the alarm system itself is now broken. It has rewired itself to ring at full volume every time someone, I don't know, opens a window or turns on a light.
That's a perfect description. The machinery of the alarm itself is now the problem, not the fire.
And when we say machinery, is this just a metaphor, or is there literal machinery inside us doing this?
Oh, it's literal biological machinery. The sources talk about the activation of glial cells, specifically microglia in the spinal cord.
Microglia. What are they normally?
Well, normally they're like the janitors or the security guards for the central nervous system.
Okay.
But in chronic pain, they go rogue, they stay activated, and they just start pumping out inflammatory chemicals that keep those nerve cells firing. They are essentially holding the alarm button down 204/7 even though there is no smoke.
Wow. So the security guards are actually sabotaging the system.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, so for everyone listening, let's try a quick mental exercise. Visualize that volume knob we were talking about. Imagine it controls how loud the world is to you. Now imagine someone just snapped it off at maximum volume. A whisper sounds like a scream. That is what your nervous system is doing during central sensitization.
And that leads us to a really critical point. When an alarm rings constantly at that volume, it doesn't just make noise. It uses a ton of energy. It drains the battery.
And that's our second teaching point, isn't it? The brain drain. The sources call it the neural resource hypothesis.
Right. And this is so important because it explains why pain isn't just a sensory problem, it's a cognitive one.
Okay, so unpack that for us. What do we mean by neural resources?
Well, the brain has a finite capacity. It's like a computer's processing power or a budget. You only have so much to go around. You've got resources for memory, for emotion, for decision-making.
And chronic pain just demands all of it.
It demands constant, high-level attention. It effectively hijacks those neural resources, diverting them away from other tasks.
So if the pain processing gets bigger, the other functions have to get smaller.
Exactly. And this leads to what some experts call the terrible triad: suffering, sleeplessness, and sadness. But it's not just a feeling. We can actually see structural changes in the brain itself.
This is the gray matter atrophy part, right? I have to say, when I read that, I had to stop. The brain is actually shrinking.
In certain areas, yes. Studies show reduced volume in a region called the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the DLPFC.
Okay, the DLPFC. We don't need to memorize the name, but what does that part of the brain do?
Think of it as the CEO of your brain. It handles executive functions: decision-making, working memory, focus, regulating your emotions.
The important stuff.
The very important stuff. When pain monopolizes the brain's energy, the CEO effectively goes on leave. That region loses connectivity and, yes, actual physical volume.
So if I'm in chronic pain, I'm not just hurting. I might be losing my ability to focus and make good decisions.
That's what the data suggests. And at the same time, we see overactivation in another area, the medial prefrontal cortex, which is more involved in emotional processing. So the thinker part of your brain is shrinking while the feeler part is overheating.
That explains so much. I love the analogy of internet bandwidth for this. It feels so relatable in our world.
How so?
Well, imagine your brain is your laptop.
Oh.
And you have a massive high-definition movie file constantly downloading in the background. That's the pain processing. Your whole system just slows to a crawl, right? You try to open an email, it lags. You try to stream a video, it buffers. The computer isn't broken, but all its bandwidth is being stolen by that one huge download.
And that manifests in real life as what patients call brain fog.
Right.
memory loss, difficulty concentrating. It isn't that the person doesn't want to pay attention to you. Their bandwidth is literally maxed out by the pain signal.
Let's try another thought experiment. Deep divers. Right now, I want you to imagine trying to solve a complex math problem in your head. No calculator.
Okay.
Now imagine doing that while holding your hand in a bucket of ice water.
It's impossible.
It's nearly impossible.
Yeah.
You can't focus on the numbers. The physical sensation just overrides everything else. That is the neural resource hypothesis in action. It's not a lack of willpower, it's a lack of bandwidth.
And the tragedy here is that this constant stress response, this state of emergency, doesn't just stay in the brain, it ripples out. It starts to affect the heart, the immune system, and eventually the bank account.
Okay, let's talk about that ripple effect. We've covered the brain, but the source material uses this phrase, systemic physiological decay. That sounds incredibly serious.
It is. When the body is in constant pain, the sympathetic nervous system is chronically activated. That's your fight or flight response.
There's a tiger in the room response.
Exactly. But it's meant to be a short burst of energy to get you away from the tiger. With chronic pain, you are running from that tiger 24/7. You are marinating in stress hormones.
What does that do to your heart over time?
It leads to hypertension, high blood pressure, and it significantly increases the risk of heart attack and stroke. The data actually shows a dose-response relationship.
Meaning what?
Meaning the more pain you have and the longer you have it, the higher your cardiovascular risk.
So it's not just that you're less active because you hurt, it's an actual chemical process.
Inactivity is a piece of it, sure, but the chemical stress load is a huge driver. And it hits the immune system just as hard.
Right. How does pain weaken your immune system?
Well, that constant stress dysregulates cortisol. We think of it as just the stress hormone, but it's a master regulator for the immune system. When it's out of balance, your T cells, your body's little soldiers, they just don't function as well.
And the sources even linked this to worse COVID-19 outcomes.
They did. People with compromised immune systems from chronic stress and pain had a harder time fighting it off. It's a cascade. Pain causes stress. Stress weakens immunity. Weakened immunity makes you more vulnerable.
And then there's the economic part of this. We started with that huge $722 billion number. But let's make it personal. What does this look like for an individual's bank account?
It is incredibly expensive to be in pain. The data shows that individuals with chronic pain have, on average, about $8,000 in additional annual medical expenses.
$8,000 every year. That's a used car. That's a huge chunk of a down payment on a house.
It is, and that's just the direct medical costs. Lost productivity adds another, almost $3,000 per person annually? And maybe the scariest stat, pain is a leading cause of early retirement.
It just pushes people out of the workforce.
The odds of retiring early are more than 3 times higher for someone with extreme pain. And that financial strain just feeds back into the stress, which feeds back into the pain. It's a horrible cycle.
There is one more cost we have to talk about, and it's harder to put a number on, but this section of the research was honestly the hardest for me to read. The relational cost.
Social cost, yeah.
Yeah, the sources use this really poignant analogy from the movie Castaway.
Yes, with Tom Hanks. It really stuck with me, too.
So for anyone who hasn't seen it, he's stranded on an island, completely isolated. And to stay sane, he makes a friend out of a volleyball named Wilson.
Right. It becomes his only companion.
And there's that devastating scene where he loses Wilson to the ocean. The source material says that for a person with chronic pain, they are Tom Hanks. They're on an island of their own experience.
And losing Wilson represents the grief of losing their former self.
Yeah.
It's often called identity theft by pain. You lose the person you were, the hiker, the baker, the person who could play on the floor with their kids.
And that grief leads to what they call the withdrawal isolation pain cycle.
Exactly. The pain makes you withdraw socially. Sometimes it's physical. It just hurts too much to go out. But often it's because of that bandwidth issue we talked about.
Right.
Trying to follow a conversation at a lewd dinner party when your brain is already screaming is just, it's exhausting, so you stop going.
And then people stop inviting you.
They do, or they get frustrated because you look fine.
Yeah.
So that withdrawal leads to isolation. And we are social animals. Isolation drives up stress hormones, which, you guessed it, makes the pain worse.
You could downward spiral.
Yeah.
And it creates this barrier where even the people who love you can't seem to reach you.
Absolutely. It puts immense strain on partners, on families. We see something called compassion fatigue, where loved ones want to help, but they feel helpless, and over time that can turn into resentment.
So we have a broken alarm system, a brain running out of bandwidth, a body decaying under stress, and relationships that are fraying. It sounds incredibly bleak. But knowing the mechanism, that has to be the first step, right?
Yeah. It's the most important step. We can't fix a machine if we don't understand how it's broken. By understanding this is a disease of the system, we can stop blaming the patient for not trying hard enough and start treating the nervous system itself.
I think this is a perfect place for a little application, a practical takeaway for our deep divers.
I agree.
I want to suggest something I'm calling an empathy audit.
I like that. What does that look like?
Well, if you know someone with chronic pain, and we've established that you do, the next time you ask them, how are you, maybe follow it up with something like, how is your bandwidth today?
Oh, that's a fantastic distinction. It acknowledges the cognitive load.
Exactly. And if they cancel plans, maybe we can start to see it not as flakiness, but as a bandwidth issue. Their background download is just taking up all their processing power that day.
And if you're the one in pain, maybe give yourself that same grace. You aren't lazy. Your brain is running a marathon while sitting still.
So let's wrap this up. Let's synthesize our key takeaways. What are the 3 big things everyone needs to walk away with?
Okay, first, chronic pain is a disease, not just a symptom. It's the process of chronification. The nervous system's volume knob gets stuck on high. The fire is out, but the alarm won't stop ringing.
Number 2, the brain drain. Pain steals your neural resources. It can physically shrink the CEO parts of your brain, causing that brain fog, because it's competing with memory and attention. It's that huge download slowing your whole system down.
And finally, takeaway number 3 is the ripple effect. This isn't just about a bad back. Unmanaged pain attacks your heart, it weakens your immune system, it drains your bank account, and it can isolate you from the people you love most.
And bottom line, why does this matter?
Because ignoring it leads to that systemic decay. We have to validate that the pain is real to treat it. And addressing it early can help prevent the alarm from becoming a permanent fixture.
This has been a heavy one, but so important. I hope if you're listening, you can treat yourself and maybe the people around you with a little more grace after hearing all this.
Absolutely. Knowledge is the first step toward real empathy.
So I want to ask you, what was your aha moment today? Was it the fire alarm analogy? Or was it realizing why you can't do math with your hand in ice water? Just think on that.
And remember, while the alarm's wiring is broken, it doesn't mean it can't be fixed. The brain is plastic. It learned to be in pain, and with the right help, it can start to unlearn it.
Exactly. And that is where we are going next time. Join us then as we dive into the solutions, how we can potentially start to turn that volume knob back down. But for today, class dismissed.